What if I told you that one of the biggest films in modern Hollywood could be walking straight into a controversy that has nothing to do with its story? That's the strange feeling I've had while watching the conversations surrounding the Odyssey. The conversations around a movie become just as fascinating as the movie itself. And honestly, that's exactly what's happening here. It almost feels like Hollywood hasn't even recovered from one major controversy before another storm started forming on the horizon. The surprising part isn't just that people are criticizing a film. That happens every week. The shocking part is that this time, the spotlight is on one of cinema's most respected filmmakers, someone whose name alone usually earns the benefit of the doubt. Yet somehow, this project has become the center of debates about casting, authenticity, realism, and whether audiences are finally reaching a breaking point with certain creative decisions. So the real mystery isn't whether The Odyssey will be a great film. The mystery is why so many people seem determined to question it before they've even seen the complete journey. When I started digging deeper into these discussions, I realized something interesting. The complaints aren't all pointing in the same direction. Instead, they seem to be connected by one larger emotion fatigue. It's almost as if audiences aren't reacting to just one movie anymore. They're reacting to years of similar creative choices that have slowly built up frustration. That's what makes this conversation different from ordinary internet outrage. Whether the reactions are loud or only represent a portion of movie fans, they reveal concerns that keep returning whenever beloved stories are adapted for modern audiences. Some people claim promotional material has already received unusually negative reactions online, while others argue those numbers can never represent the full audience. Personally, I think both sides have a point. Online engagement doesn't decide box office success, but it does tell us something about public sentiment. And right now, if you spend enough time reading fan discussions, you'll notice one recurring question appearing over and over again. Have filmmakers started changing iconic characters so often that audiences no longer trust creative reinterpretations? That's a much bigger issue than a single casting announcement. Let's start with what many fans consider the biggest concern: the identity of legendary characters. Stories like The Odyssey have survived thousands of years because people connect with them on a cultural level. They're more than entertainment. They're mythology, literature, and shared history. Whenever filmmakers reinterpret such characters, there's always a delicate balance between artistic freedom and audience expectation. Some viewers welcome fresh ideas because every generation deserves its own version of timeless stories. Others believe certain elements should remain untouched because changing them risks losing the essence that made those characters memorable in the first place. That's where the debate around Helen of Troy enters the conversation. Let me say this carefully. The discussion isn't really about whether an actor is talented. Most people agree that talented performers can surprise us in unexpected roles. The argument many fans are making is about whether the casting naturally matches the image audiences have carried in their imagination for years. Fair or unfair, those expectations exist. And once they collide with creative reinterpretation, controversy becomes almost inevitable. Sometimes perception matters just as much as execution, especially before anyone has actually watched the finished film. But here's the question I keep asking myself. Are audiences reacting to the actor, or are they reacting to what they believe the casting represents? Because those are two completely different things. Every time Hollywood reimagines a classic character, discussions quickly shift away from acting ability and towards symbolism. Fans begin wondering whether the decision served the story or whether it served a completely different purpose. That's where emotions take over. Once people start believing creative choices were made for reasons other than storytelling, trust begins to disappear. Even if the final performance turns out to be incredible, first impressions are incredibly difficult to erase. Cinema has always relied on the audience accepting an illusion. The moment viewers begin questioning that illusion before the opening scene even begins, filmmakers face an uphill battle. That's why these conversations matter. They're not necessarily predicting the quality of the movie. They're revealing whether audiences are emotionally prepared to embrace it. And honestly, rebuilding lost trust is much harder than earning it in the first place. The second criticism goes even deeper because it touches realism itself. Imagine spending hundreds of millions creating breathtaking historical landscapes, designing authentic armor, building ancient cities, and choreographing massive battles. Everything is carefully crafted to immerse the audience in another era. Then suddenly, one casting choice pulls viewers out of that illusion because they struggle to believe the character physically belongs in that world. Again, this isn't about insulting anyone. Acting has never been determined solely by height, weight, or appearance. Cinema is full of extraordinary performers who transform beyond expectations. Yet historical epics often demand a specific physical language. Warriors don't simply fight with swords. They carry themselves with years of discipline, endurance, and battlefield experience. When viewers can't immediately imagine a character surviving in that brutal environment, disbelief begins replacing immersion. That's the concern many fans continue expressing. They're worried that visual authenticity could be weakened if the physical presence of certain characters doesn't align with the harsh realities the film is trying to portray. Now here's where I think the conversation becomes more complicated than people admit. History itself is full of legendary fighters who didn't necessarily fit the stereotype of gigantic warriors. Skill, intelligence, speed, and leadership have always mattered alongside physical strength. So is it really impossible for a smaller warrior to command respect? Not at all. The real issue is whether the film convinces us through its storytelling. If the screenplay builds that character carefully, audiences may completely forget their initial doubts. But that's exactly why expectations are so dangerous before release. Right now, many fans are judging isolated images without seeing the emotional context surrounding them. Still, I understand why those concerns exist. Epic cinema depends heavily on visual credibility. Every frame asks viewers to believe impossible journeys, mythical creatures, and legendary heroes. If even one important piece feels disconnected from that world, the illusion becomes harder to maintain. That's why casting discussions become far more intense in historical epics than in contemporary dramas or superhero adventures. Then we arrive at what might actually be the most relatable criticism of them all: overexposure. Have you ever reached a point where an actor appears in so many major productions that you stop seeing the character and only see the celebrity? I think we've all experienced that at some point. It doesn't necessarily mean the performer lacks talent. Sometimes success creates its own problem. Hollywood naturally wants bankable stars because recognizable faces attract audiences, but there comes a moment when familiarity begins working against immersion. Instead of discovering a new mythical figure, viewers feel like they're watching the same actor wearing different costumes. According to many online discussions, that's exactly how some people feel regarding the rumored portrayal of Athena. Fans imagine Athena as an overwhelming presence-wise, intimidating, mysterious, commanding attention the moment she enters the frame. Their concern isn't simply about acting ability. It's about whether the chosen performer can disappear into such an iconic goddess rather than bringing along the baggage of countless previous blockbuster appearances. What's fascinating is that this criticism says just as much about audiences as it does about Hollywood. We constantly ask studios to hire talented actors, yet once those actors become too successful, we begin complaining that they're everywhere. It's almost impossible to satisfy both expectations simultaneously. Still, there's truth hidden inside that contradiction. Mythological characters demand a sense of mystery. When audiences instantly recognize every facial expression from previous films, some of that mystery disappears. Athena shouldn't feel like another celebrity cameo. She should feel timeless, ancient, almost beyond human understanding. Whether the finished performance delivers that feeling remains completely unknown. But it's understandable why fans are discussing it so passionately. These characters aren't ordinary supporting roles. They're symbols that have existed for centuries. People naturally protect the images they've built in their imagination, especially when adapting stories that have shaped literature across generations. This leads me to what I think is the biggest hidden theme behind all these debates. Maybe audiences aren't rejecting change itself. Maybe they're rejecting change that feels disconnected from the world being created. Every adaptation changes something. That's unavoidable. Even the most faithful film versions make countless adjustments for pacing, storytelling, or visual presentation. The difference lies in whether those changes feel organic. When audiences believe every creative decision strengthens the story, they usually accept it. When they suspect decisions were influenced by outside considerations instead of narrative necessity, resistance grows almost instantly. That's why discussions surrounding the Odyssey have become so emotionally charged. Fans aren't simply comparing actors. They're questioning the philosophy guiding modern blockbuster filmmaking. And once a conversation reaches that level, it stops being about one movie. It becomes a referendum on an entire era of Hollywood decision-making. But here's the twist that keeps making me hesitate before drawing conclusions. History has repeatedly shown us that early internet reactions can be spectacularly wrong. We've seen films criticized months before release only to become beloved classics. We've also seen projects celebrated online that later disappointed audiences in theaters. Marketing campaigns reveal only tiny fragments of the final experience. A single trailer can't communicate emotional arcs, character development, or the chemistry between performers. That's why I think it's dangerous to declare victory or failure before the complete story unfolds. If the director delivers breathtaking storytelling, unforgettable performances, and emotional depth, many current criticisms could fade surprisingly quickly. Great cinema has a remarkable ability to silence skepticism. At the same time, if the film fails to justify its creative choices, those same criticisms will only grow louder. Everything depends on execution, not assumptions. Another detail worth thinking about is the enormous weight carried by the director's reputation. Some filmmakers earn extraordinary trust because they've consistently delivered memorable cinematic experiences. Their names become brands associated with ambition, technical excellence, and storytelling on a grand scale. Audiences often buy tickets before seeing a single review simply because they believe that filmmaker deserves their confidence. That kind of trust isn't built overnight. It's earned across decades. Yet even legendary directors eventually face moments when expectations become almost impossible to satisfy. Ironically, the greater their reputation, the harsher the criticism whenever people sense potential disappointment. That's why this situation feels so unusual. Instead of debating whether the director possesses talent, people are wondering whether even great filmmakers can misread changing audience expectations. It's a fascinating question because cinema has always evolved alongside the viewers watching it. If I had to build one overarching fan theory from everything we've discussed, it would be this. The real battle surrounding the Odyssey may not happen on the battlefield within the story. It may happen between two completely different philosophies of filmmaking. One side believes timeless stories should evolve with every generation, embracing reinterpretation without fear. The other believes certain myths endure precisely because their essential identities remain recognizable across centuries. Neither perspective is completely right or completely wrong. Both come from genuine passion for storytelling. That's why the internet feels so divided. People aren't arguing because they hate mythology. They're arguing because they love it. And whenever people deeply love something, even small creative choices can trigger surprisingly emotional responses. Maybe that's the greatest compliment any adaptation can receive. It proves these ancient stories still matter enough to inspire fierce debate thousands of years after they were first told. So, where does all of this leave the film's box office prospects? Honestly, I don't think anyone can answer that with certainty. Online discussions create headlines, trending topics, and endless reaction videos, but theaters operate according to different rules. Casual audiences often ignore internet debates entirely. Families choose movies based on trailers, reviews, word of mouth, and the simple desire to experience something spectacular on the biggest screen possible. If The Odyssey delivers emotionally and visually, it could become one of the defining cinematic events of its year, regardless of current criticism. On the other hand, if audiences leave theaters feeling the concerns were justified, negative word of mouth could become far more damaging than any online controversy before release. That's the unpredictable nature of modern cinema. Public opinion can change almost overnight once real viewers begin sharing authentic experiences instead of expectations. And maybe that's the perfect place to end this theory. Right now, everything we're seeing exists in the realm of speculation, interpretation, and passionate fan discussion. None of us has witnessed the complete adventure yet. None of us knows whether controversial casting choices will ultimately feel inspired or misguided. None of us knows whether these online debates represent the wider audience or only a particularly vocal corner of the internet. What we do know is that The Odyssey has already achieved one remarkable thing. It has people talking long before the full story reaches theaters. Whether those conversations transform into admiration or disappointment is a mystery only the finished film can solve. Until then, every opinion remains a possibility rather than a verdict. And every debate reminds us just how powerful timeless stories continue to be. If you enjoyed this theory, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I genuinely love to hear your own questions and theories in the comments below. This is Liam Harrison from MovieCast, thanking you for staying connected throughout the video, and I'll see you in the next one.